Tradition plays a large role in many cultures around the world. But have you ever stopped to consider whether such cultural heritage serves to support our future? What if, rather than passing down knowledge, it enslaves and traps people, robbing them of their agency and individuality? Genki attempts to examine this theme in their game Jade Cocoon, Story of the Tamamayu, released for the Sony PlayStation in Japan in 1998 and NA and EU in 1999 and 2000 respectively. Jade Cocoon will take you on a journey through a densely forested world where, due to heavy persecution, you'll begin to wonder whether there is a reason for continuing to pursue your path. One thing that I will note right off the bat is that you may notice a distinct correlation between the themes and aesthetic of this game and some of the films produced by Studio Ghibli. The key artist in all instances is Katsuya Kondo, who produced the art for such titles as Castle in the Sky, Princess Mononoke, and My Neighbor Totoro, just as a few examples. In fact, it's often claimed that he is one of the key people that developed the Ghibli style that we are so familiar with today. If anything, these design philosophies are something you should look forward to in Jade Cocoon, as they were thematically appropriate to the overall narrative. We play as Levant, a young budding cocoon master in the village of Cyrus, a town that is completely isolated by the surrounding dense forest. Some people worship the forest, being that it is what gave them life. However, others despise it and the malicious denizens that inhabit its sunless floors. The game opens on the eve before a festival, where the villagers are preparing to mourn the spirits of those that are being consumed by the forest. Levant is resting in a town watchtower with his friend Mabu. Even from the get-go, the theme of following tradition is thrust in our face, as Mabu tells Levant that he has to become a cocoon master, because his father was, and that's just the way it is. After entering slumber for the evening, Levant is greeted by a stranger in his dream who battles and defeats our young hero. Waking the next day, the village is suddenly attacked by a large swarm of locust-like beasts called the Onibubu that harbinger a deep sleep that those afflicted cannot awaken from. As the only course to rectify this situation lies deep within the surrounding forest, Levant is pushed into his role of cocoon master, forced to marry Mabu, and entrusted with the task of entering the forest to procure a cure. I've mentioned the term cocoon master a few times up to this point, and I feel that I should probably define it. A cocoon master is a male who has the ability to tame the malice of the minions of the forest through the melody of music. Tamed minions can then be summoned forth from cocoons to fight in the stead of the musician. In this way, a village can live peacefully with the forest without having to worry about being consumed by it. Unfortunately, before the events of the game, Levant's father went into the forest one day and never returned, sealing the eventual fate of Cyrus in the absence of an immediate successor. The other important part of a cocoon master's role is their relationship with their Nagi wife. The Nagi people have passed down purification rituals that can pacify the malice of minions captured in cocoons and make them allies, as well as spin them into silk which can be sold for money. In order for a cocoon master to be successful, they must have their female counterparts spin these cocoons, and must never do it themselves. The consequence of having their wife do this act is a slow decay and painful degradation of the body of the woman, who will eventually begin to bear hideous scars and brandings that get worse with each ceremony. Eventually, this process leads to death. Returning to the theme of tradition that the game balances so heavily upon, Mabu often questions and despises why this is her role to play, and is adamant that she doesn't want to be like Levant's mother, who patiently waits for a husband who seemingly abandoned her by running away from his responsibility. One complaint that Jade Cocoon often receives is that the lore is very convoluted and difficult to follow. I would argue that this isn't the case. Sure, there are a number of different terms thrown at you along the adventure, but if you take your time and talk to all the villagers between each progression in the forest, and in particular, talk to the old cemetery keeper, understanding the game becomes a cinch. As is the case in our world, as time goes on and history erodes the edges of memory, the names of events, places, and people become obscured. That's why sometimes the same historical character, locations, or events may have different names, and can sometimes make the game confusing. I find a lot of people that play this game generally tend to rush through it without taking the time to listen to all the legends and interact with the people around the village. If you stop to smell the roses, then you will gain the scent of knowledge that you may feel is missing. During Levant's quest to save the village, he must venture into 4 different areas of the forest which have been sealed by the people of the kingdom of Gahana Palal. Initially, I was a little uncomfortable with how the game controlled, as it uses the classic tank controls that you'd find in an early Resident Evil title. However, after I got used to it, I found that I could change Levant's direction with the D-pad, and then hold triangle to make him run forward. After a while, it became second nature and not a bother at all. Through exploring the depths of the forest, Levant will come across many of its denizens, minions that he must pacify in order to proceed. Minions will appear on the field map, and if Levant touches them, a battle will begin on a separate screen. Many players have previously compared Jade Cocoon to the Pokemon series, and whilst I can understand the reason for these claims, there are some vast differences. First, Levant himself can attack the minions and other foes that he comes up against, though it is recommended that he does not kill them. Instead, he should weaken them so that he can capture them inside a Firefly, a type of cocoon that houses hostile minions ready to be pacified by Mabu. Battles do tend to be a bit more drawn out compared to other games on the Sony PlayStation though. Perhaps this is due to load times. For instance, sometimes it takes the enemy a few seconds to decide what it's going to do. Also, the summoning and capturing sequences add unnecessary amounts of time to the gameplay that I wished could have been skipped. Though if you do decide to go the route of using Levant to take out many of the minions, please note that he can be very susceptible to status effects, especially ones like poison where
Gumby, he's here and he will be sure to stay. Gumby.
Battling minions is all well and good and will allow your own minions to gain levels if they deal the killing blow. However, the more interesting element of this game is merging. 2 minions can be merged with each other, with the first taking on the physical traits and abilities of the second. I always found it interesting to see what a minion would look like after it had been merged. Merging also serves to pass on and increase the number of abilities that a minion has. In addition to being able to cast magic, each minion has an ability that can be assigned to their body parts, such as their fangs or their feet. Theoretically, this allows you to create the ultimate minion, equipped for any situation. However, the game has 4 elemental properties: earth, fire, air, and water. Each minion is governed by one of these, which determines their strengths and weaknesses. For example, a water minion is strong against a fire minion, but weak against one of earth. It is possible to add multiple elements to the same minion through merging, but the cost of this is an overall dilution in the potency of the minion's elemental magic properties across all the elements that they have been assigned. You can only carry 3 minions in your party at any one time, so it's never possible to have pure minions of each of the 4 properties. In this regard, you do need to be careful in deciding which minions would be the best for the situation you're about to enter. If at any point during your adventure you do happen to die, don't worry, Levant will be ejected from the forest rather than you being shown a game over screen. There is no penalty for dying, so if you do see the Reaper, it is possible to reassess your situation and try to formulate a better strategy, or just simply level up. Levant can equip various types of weapons, armor, and accessories to help him on his journey, and it pays to keep him outfitted with the best equipment at all times. One time, an enemy caught me off guard, attacking before I had a chance to summon a minion, and Levant died in one hit, returning me to the beginning of that forest section. I was not happy. One thing that I really loved about this game, and just in general with Sony PlayStation era games, is that the backgrounds are all pre-rendered 3D. I have a real thing for any game that decides to use this as their design philosophy, because when it's done right, it can be really beautiful. Each of the forests have their own distinguishing features that make them interesting to explore. Weapons, when equipped to Levant, will appear differently on his battle model, sometimes changing his battle stance, which was a nice touch. One minor complaint I have is that it is possible to find items lying about the environment, but sometimes these can be a little difficult to see, so are often missable. Additionally, It's not always clear where the exits are from each screen, so sometimes you may find that you'll be running around lost in circles. The characters themselves are 3D modelled and have more detail than, say, those found in Final Fantasy VII. They were quite expressive and carried the weight of the narrative effectively. I loved the minion designs, and the ability to merge them always made me excited to see what the result would be. And of course, once again I must say that I love that Katsuya Kondo was the animation director on this game. You can really tell that he played a huge role in its design and development. The music uses a lot of tribal instruments, jungle rhythms, and ambient sounds to portray the different areas. Sometimes when the narrative points strike, the music can be quite somber and lonely in tone. I think the music effectively captured the mood of the various environments, and I always looked forward to what piece I would get to hear next. Of particular note, I really liked the title titled Cyrus Village Chrysalis, which embodied the feeling of the weight of responsibility Levant had on his shoulders for ensuring that he saved the villagers whilst considering the mortality of all living creatures whom inevitably march towards their life's terminus. Jade Cocoon should also be commended for its voice acting. Sometimes it's corny, sure, but sometimes it really hits the right note.
But why, even after all of that, does she still love him? Are all women like that? I can't say this in front of Mother Garai, but I really don't agree with that at all.
It also completely permeates the game. Every single scene of importance is voice acted, which goes a long way to explain why the game is so short, being that it's only a single disc, and so full of rich environments and voice acted lines. However, I do feel that the death sounds of minions is kind of laughable, considering it sounds like the sound designer chose an elephant from a random sound bank and thought that it was suitable. Jade Cocoon is only a short ROM, clocking in at around 8 hours. Having a heavy theme of tradition made me question whether one should have diligence to their duty even in the face of prejudice and persecution, especially after hearing some of the vitriol coming from the mouths of the villagers Levant was helping. Whilst comparisons to Pokemon are inevitable, Jade Cocoon stands on its own with its own identity, and shouldn't be dismissed in the shadows of the larger, more commercially successful Pokemon series. With its rich pre-rendered 3D backgrounds and amazing music, this is a game that you shouldn't pass up on if you have some spare time. By the way, when you play a game, do you tend to like talking to all the NPCs after events, or are you more of a rush to the finish line type of person? Let me know in the comments. This has been Venwa with a review of Jade Cocoon. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to like or subscribe, as it really helps me out a bunch. As always, thanks for taking the time to check out my video, and I hope to see you all again next time. Bye bye for now.